So it's finally here, the first race of the 2026 F1 season, the 2026 Australian Grand Prix. Great to have Australia as the first race of the season. There's a lot to get through today, so let's go straight into the track guide. So looking at the circuit layer, there are some changes this year. Of course, first time since 2010 that there will be no DRS at Albert Park, which is a bit of a scary thought. Of course, DRS basically being removed, and what we are now calling straight line mode basically being implemented. And so instead of DRS zones, we now have straight line or straight mode zones. And we have quite a few of them around Albert Park. So we have the one along the main straight, second one between turns 2 and 3, 5, 6 as well, and then the long run between turns 8 and turns 9, followed by 10 to 11. It'll be interesting to see how much overtaking we have, if that aids overtaking at all with these new cars, or if they're going to be so starved for energy that they're basically just going to spend the entire lap managing energy and not being able to afford using any extra to overtake another car. That's obviously something that's going to be a big plot point that's going to be talked about this weekend. But traditionally, the best places to make an overtake here are turns 9 and 10, and then going into the main straight, turns 1 and 2. One other thing I think that's going to be really interesting to look at, especially with turns 9 and 10, this is traditionally one of the highest speed sections of the lap. It's great to see the cars going very, very close to flat out through that section. And something that we saw at Bahrain testing was that cars were not going flat out or anywhere near their limit through some of these high-speed sections, basically because they needed to recover energy, recharge the battery. So we're really interesting both from live, footage on the ground, people watching beside the track, but also from the TVs as well. How did the cars look through those turn 9-10 sequence? Now, taking a look at some more stats about this track, it's 5.278 kilometers. We're expected to have 58 laps on Sunday, and the race lap record is a 1:19.813 set by Charles Leclerc in 2024. Makes sense given that last year's race was really wet. Don't expect that record to be broken this year. Average speed of that lap is 238 kilometers an hour, which ranks 6 of the 23 tracks on this year's calendar. That I have data for. Of course, we have the new track in Madrid coming up in September, I believe, or late August, and we don't really have any data for that. So for all of these stats for this year, there's only going to be 23 tracks, not including Madrid, of course. Downforce rating, relatively low downforce with the changes that they had, I think, 3 to 4 years ago now. Downforce rating between 0 minimum downforce and 1 maximum downforce, 0.12. And drivers will be going, in theory, full throttle 77% of the lap, but I think with the new cars coming in this year, these full throttle numbers are really going to have to get adjusted for the new cars. But this is from the old formula, so again, we'll have to see what happens with the new cars. In terms of corner tendency, I would say it's slow. Generally, it's slow. There's a lot of slow corners around the lap, but there are, with the changes that came in, there are more medium to high speed corners as well. And it'll be, a pretty interesting track to see how the cars go at. Now, pole to win ratio, surprisingly low given that overtaking is so difficult here, but we have had a number of races, I think in the mid-2010s, where it seems like every year almost a pole's are lost through one way or another, often through, strategy or a poor start, something like that. And given the uncertainty, not necessarily chaos, but definitely uncertainty around starts in 2026, there's definitely a possibility that whoever gets pole this year could have a really poor start. Someone, probably one of the Ferraris, could easily get ahead of them going into turn 1. Now, rookie qualifying percentage, we do have one rookie that this year, that is of course Arvid Lindblad, and so it'll be interesting to see how he fares. Not quite the 5 or 6 that we had last year, but still it'll be interesting to see how he goes through his rookie season. But rookie qualifying percentage, one of the lower ones on the calendar, 29%, which ranks 18th out of 23 tracks. Makes sense that given that Australia has traditionally been one of the first tracks on the F1 calendar, so it'll be one of the tracks where the rookies will be least experienced, and they'll have the biggest deficits in terms of performance to their teammates. Now, safety car percentage since 2010, 64%, so more than every other race. So it'll be interesting to see if we have another safety car this year. Given some of the chaos we're expecting with unreliability cars, breaking down at the side of the track, probably the Aston Martin. Would not be surprised if we have a safety car this year. And this was a track, we had the Australian Grand Prix before this, of course, at Adelaide, but the Melbourne Albert Park circuit has been used since 1996, so that was 30 years ago. So makes me feel quite old, even though I was not even alive when that first race in Melbourne happened. Now, tires for this weekend, soft C5, medium C4, hard C3. My expectation is that you're just going to have a one-stopper. Most teams will probably opt to start on the medium C4 and then just do a one-stop to the C3. Any cars that qualify out of position, like if they have a bad qualifying session, I would see, or like just, get knocked out in Q1. I think many of them might opt to start on the hard and then basically just run as long as possible in case there's a safety car or some driver in the midfield is very, very slow and is holding the pack up. In which case, they might be able to, get some points, overcut a whole bunch of cars. That happened quite a bit in the 2019 race, where a bunch of drivers, like I think Stroll and Kvyat, basically managed to jump a whole bunch of cars because I think it was Giovinazzi that year who was very, very slow. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens again this year. So taking a look at the weekend schedule, so for Friday, FP1 12:30 p.m., FP2 4 in the afternoon local time, and the expected weather for FP2 is 22 degrees and mostly sunny. Then we get to Saturday, FP3 12:30 p.m. and then qualifying at 4. And expected weather for qualifying is, cloudy to sunny. So there might be some clouds. There might be sun as well. And then Sunday, Grand Prix, 3 p.m. sharp, 24 degrees and sunny. Again, track temperature is a little bit hotter than Friday or Saturday. So engineers will have to take that into their calculations with things like tire wear. But it's not that different, so I don't think it'll be a super big issue. And it seems like, unlike last year, almost certainly no rain for this year, but you never know. Forecasts can change very, very quickly. And of course, as well, you also have Formula 2, Formula 3 supercars as well. So there'll be a lot of action this weekend, not just F1. So even if F1 might be a bit of a farce with cars lifting and coasting, not going flat out in qualifying, hopefully Formula 2, Formula 3 should still provide some really good action for fans at the track, but also for fans watching back home. Now, last year's race, 2025, very, very chaotic. Won, of course, by Lando Norris, and he was joined on the podium by Max Verstappen, George Russell. A race where almost all the rookies crashed out except for Kimi Antonelli in the wet conditions. A couple of the veterans as well, Sainz and Alonso. And of course, most notably, very, very late on, Oscar Piastri was on pace for a first Australian podium, I think ever. And of course, he spun out late on in the race, was able to recover to 9th place, but those podium hopes were definitely dashed in that very untimely spin. Now, taking a look at best and worst qualifiers at this track, I've changed the format for this section a little bit for this year, just because I wanted to, maybe bias a little bit more towards the more experienced drivers here instead of the less experienced drivers, which is how it was set up before. So how we have it set up is we have, how would you explain this? Basically, the number of times that driver has out-qualified their teammate at a track more than they would be expected to based on their career qualifying numbers. And so the best qualifiers at this track specifically, Lewis Hamilton plus 1.94. So basically, he's out-qualified his teammate 2 more times than would be expected based on his historical career qualifying results. Median qualifying gap at this teammate at this track, negative 0.132. Next up, Lando Norris, positive 1.43. Median qualifying gap of negative 0.274. And then third is Alex Albon, positive 1.13, and a median qualifying gap that's really, really big, negative 0.46. Helped by having teammates like Latifi, Sargent for quite a few years there in that Albon's career. Now, taking a look at worst qualifiers, and again, same stat, but kind of the other way around. Worst qualifier at this track is Valtteri Bottas, negative 2.83. So he's been out qualified at this track 3 times more than would be expected. And again, he was teammates with Hamilton for quite a few of those years, so makes sense there. Median qualifying gap of positive 0.09. Second, Charles Leclerc, negative 2.07, median qualifying gap of positive 0.089. And then third, the home hero, local boy, Oscar Piastri, negative 0.86 for him, and then positive 0.257 is his median qualifying gap. So again, it'll be interesting to see if we see those 6 drivers, the 3 in the best, 3 in the worst, continue to have more of those same trends. If the 3 drivers in worst continue to struggle in qualifying, and the 3 in the best continue to do very, very well in qualifying. Now, for the first quality model predictions of the year, of course, we now have 11 teams instead of 10, but the 11 drivers who are predicted to out-qualify their teammates for the first race of the season are Norris, Russell, Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, Lawson, Alonso, Behrman, Bortoleto, Gasly, and Bottas. Some of these I think are definitely going to be quite a bit off. I would expect Verstappen to out-qualify Hadjar by more than 1/10 of a second, for example. I think Behrman out-qualifying Ocon by 4/10 is probably a bit too optimistic there. But again, a lot of these I think could be pretty close. And again, the star, if you don't know, the star for Lawson here is that basically because both Racing Bulls drivers are so inexperienced, I don't have enough track-specific data for them. So basically, it's just whatever their median qualifying gap is basically just going to be their prediction for this year, of course. Based on also including kind of what my models have basically predicted to be the gap for this year. Now, finishing off with predictions, I think I forgot to do the animation for this. Yes, I did forget to do the animation. But the predictions for this year, I'm going to go pretty conservative for the first race of the season, even though with reliability, wouldn't be out of line if a couple of these drivers have like mechanical issues and you have a bit of a surprise winner and maybe a couple drivers on the podium who weren't really expecting to be there. But I'm basically sticking with the same predictions I have for the top 3 in the championship. So I'm going with a George Russell win, Leclerc second, and Kimi Antonelli rounding out the podium in third. Will be interesting to see who does well here, who doesn't. I expect, especially the first race of the season, reliability to be a big issue. And so that means that you might have a couple teams, like I would say maybe Audi or Racing Bulls teams that are expecting to be towards the back of the midfield. It might be a really good chance for them to score points. Another thing that's going to be really important, I think, as well, is that something that's been talked about during preseason testing is that it seems like the Ferrari engine cars, because they have a smaller turbo, they seem to do much better in starts than the non-Ferrari engine cars. So, for example, if Leclerc is starting, let's say P3 on the grid, and you have the 2 Mercedes in front of him, there's a possibility that with that smaller turbo, better start, Leclerc could be leading into turn 1. Maybe a little bit too much hopium for the Ferrari fans there, but that's something that could definitely be discussed. And even if the Mercedes is the clearly faster car, because it's so difficult to overtake around this track, and because it seems like the initial reports seem to be that the overtake mode is not as good as DRS, which is not a great sign, he could basically hold on to that position even if the Mercedes are quite a bit quicker. One last thing as well, I just want to say for predictions, is that because this is likely going to be one of the most energy intensive tracks on the year because of the lack of heavy braking zones, or even though there are quite a few, there are a lack of heavy braking zone. There's a lot of long straights or basically kinks with no braking zones in the middle, kind of like the turn 8, 9, 10 complex, I would say, is a good example of that. It means that cars that have really good engine recovery and stuff like that. So it seems like Red Bull, for example, seem to be one of those cars. Even if they might not have the outright performance to qualify on the front row, they are a car that could do very, very well in the race with that superior engine, battery and energy recovery. So there's a lot of different factors going on, a lot of things that I think we're going to have to learn over the first 5 or 6 races, mapping characteristics to different cars and then mapping those same characteristics to different tracks to kind of help people like me try to make predictions about what's going to happen in those races. But that's all for my preview for the 2026 Australian Grand Prix. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.